What's up, Spikes? We are here with the Gauntlet wrap-up. So this will be the final overview of how the Briar Gauntlet went. So we're going to be going over each of the matchups, doing a quick recap of what happened, and then sort of just give our thoughts from either side of the table. What could have been done differently, what we thought we did well, how things could be improved, that sort of thing, and generally just how the deck felt. So yeah, we were running Briar through the Gauntlet, and that was piloted by Jan over here.
Hello.
And you know what, let's just get straight into the Gauntlet itself. So the first game was Briar versus Lexi. And that one did end with a Lexi victory.
Unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah. There were a couple points during the game where I think it was actually both of the 3 of a kinds that I played.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to leverage the tempo that I already had, and had they weren't awful, but they were less than optimal. So I was unfortunately giving some tempo back to you. And I think that was the one... You ended up with a hand of only non-attacks. Right?
Yeah, that was one where I think after you kind of gave the tempo back on the first 3 of a kind, I couldn't capitalize on it. I had no attack actions. It was all just non-attacks. So I also kind of stumbled, and then you were able to come back with another 3 of a kind that was also, not spectacular, but it ended up being enough to sort of push back, because I think at that point I was ahead. I think you were at 1 and I was at 3 or 4.
Yeah, it was still a really close game, but that game I think really does embody, which is funny, embodiments, but it does embody the importance and how almost minuscule but very important tempo is in Flesh and Blood, because even though I was having these turns where I'm still able to do stuff, it wasn't enough to put on a decent amount of pressure to really feel like I was ahead at any point until the very end, obviously. And then unfortunately, just because of luck of the draw, tempo was completely ripped from you. But
I had it.
I do think that this game specifically is a really good introduction to just tempo as an idea in a card game,
and how quickly it can change.
Each individual turn is its own sequence, and you can't really a lot of people will be like, oh well, I had a really good turn last turn, so obviously I'm winning. That isn't always the case, especially if it's I had a really sick first turn. When both players draw back up, that kind of doesn't matter unless you're able to have something concrete to show for it, which we do have an example of coming up not next, but the one after. So we will get into that a little bit later. But the next one was Briar versus Kano, and Briar did win that one.
Yes, triumphantly.
Yes.
Take that, wizard.
So this one was definitely twofold. First of all I am just not super familiar with Kano. I'm not saying that was the only reason I lost, but I definitely could have played it, I think, slightly better, but also we were sort of talking about it before.
Yeah, I don't think I was kind of going through it again and looking at it, and I don't think there was a different way you could have played realistically. I guess there's the option where you just go full defense. Yeah. But it with the number... that works when you're getting attacked for 6 or 7 a turn, but the Briar puts out 11, 12, 13 a turn.
Which is a much larger percentage of Kano's life total in general.
Right. And I think in one turn you got me down from 20 to 10. And so that's sort of the danger zone when you're playing against Kano, is you can very quickly get shredded down. Yeah. So in a lot of situations when I think you were at 3, it makes more sense for you to try to kill me than it does try to block and survive my attack to get another turn. So I don't think there's many, with the way my hands rolled out and the way your hands were, I don't think there's many other ways that game could have gone. There's not a lot of decision points that could have changed that.
Which really just kind of is how Kano plays in general, right? You don't have a ton of... like, you know, I want to say you don't have a ton of inevitability, but that's kind of obvious. But you are sort of subject to, unless you're playing like Hope Merchant's Hood or something like that, you're kind of subject to just whatever
what's in your hands,
whatever
and
the top like
flip?
10 or 15 cards are, depending on how far the game goes. You just sort of have to hope that there's a good density and a good spread of cards within that top. So
Kano's really all about picking your moment to pull the trigger. Like there's definitely merit to blocking through some of the early turns just to exhaust some of their resources. And then at what point do you just sort of like pull the trigger and go?
No, absolutely. But so that was a very decisive victory from what I remember from Briar. So there you go. And then we have the next one. Game 3 was Briar versus Dorinthia. Dorinthia did end up winning there. And this was what we were referencing before about going all out on your first turn and having something to show for it. This is a good example of that too.
Right.
Because I was able to go first.
Yes. Bill went first. And for those of you who haven't played a lot against Warrior, specifically Dorinthia with Dawnblade, the first attack of the first turn is very important. You always have to think they have an attack reaction. If they're attacking you for 3, it's not 3, it's likely 6 or 8. And you have to overcompensate because the problem is once they get that first hit in, then they can attack a second time. And so the big mistake that I had made was that I should have all out blocked the first sword attack, knowing that there's no amount of attack reactions to pump it past what I could have blocked, which basically shuts down Bill's turn.
Yes.
Like Bill's turn is just done and I draw back up to 4. So it's kind of, that's what you have to be doing. You almost want to go second against Dorinthia as long as you know that you have to full block the first sword attack. Because that's the one, the second one is the one that puts the counter on it, but the first one is what lets them attack a second time. So you always have to be thinking about, because they don't play other attack actions and they don't play a ton of defense reactions. It's all buffs and ways to get go again and attack reactions. So you have to be playing around that. And I mean, I just didn't. I wasn't thinking about it as much as I should have. And so I kind of like stumbled out of the gate in that game and just like never really got footing back. Yeah.
Well, that's just in general, like what I was saying there, because I was able to go first. And even if, you know, if it was a different deck, if you were against a different deck and I used my whole hand to attack you, you used your whole hand to block and nothing changed, we both draw up. Basically, nothing is different. Maybe because I went first, I get a counter on my tunic before you do, that sort of thing. But because with that, even if I'm only able to get through 1 damage per attack, my Dawnblade goes from 3, which attacking for 3 is fine, but attacking for 4 is the next breakpoint. Instead of being able to block it fully with 1 card, you have to block it with 2. And then if I have an attack reaction past that, I attack a second time, which also requires, you know, likely 2 cards. So it like just the 3 to 4 jump makes it so much more difficult to deal with Dory for the rest of the game. So yeah, you are absolutely right. Don't be afraid to overblock Dory on turn 1, because the game can, like, that 1 counter snowballs a lot more than people realize. So one thing that we did want to mention, upon rewatching the Dorinthia game, there was unfortunately on my part a misplay. I attacked on the last turn. And Jan did full block, which we were just talking about the virtues of. But because it didn't hit, Dorinthia didn't trigger, and so I wasn't actually able to attack a second time in the same turn with the Dawnblade. So attacking him a second time for lethal was wrong. The thing is, even if...
In the long run, I don't think it would have mattered.
Yeah, I would have lost my counters.
Yes.
But you would have had to take an entire turn off.
Right.
So I would have been able to draw back up to a full hand. You would have taken the whole turn off. You would have had 4 cards in hand or whatever, and you were still in a pretty precarious situation. So it's possible that the game turns slightly differently, but I think I had enough of a...
I think that far into the game, I think it's still strongly in your favor. I will say, just like for statistics, there's probably a world where I do win that game after that. But I think if you looked in general, like out of 100 games, you win most of them.
Yeah. At some point we'll have a rematch,
Yeah.
and I won't cheat, hopefully. But yeah, that one counter though, especially at the beginning of the game, just to bring this all back home, preventing that one counter from Dory to make sure that she doesn't snowball for the rest of the game is extremely important and something that you should be willing to do. You should be willing to overblock on turn 1 to prevent that the possibility of that one counter to prevent the snowballing.
So can we put an asterisk on that? Win or loss?
Yeah, it was a loss, sort of. Yeah. But also, speaking of snowballing, the next game was versus Oldhim. And this one was a slog. Yes. Oldhim did end up coming out victorious, but it was for something that your play was 100% correct.
Yeah. The last play of the game was it's a combination of me not knowing all of the attack. I keep losing to attack reaction, not knowing all the attack reactions, and also not ever playing against an Oldhim deck that ever ran attack reactions. So as you have watched, I lost to a pummel while I was at 4, and I blocked 3. So I took 5 damage and died.
Yes.
Off of a pummel. That what you don't see in the clip is how long I actually agonized over this decision. It was a lot.
We tanked for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, it was a lot to get to this point, because and as I think I mentioned in the episode, if I overblock to compensate for, at the time, the attack reaction that I had no idea what it was actually, I'm not in a winning position. I'm attacking for 2, and that's just basically giving you 4 more cards to come at me with. Yeah. So the decision I ultimately made was block for 3, take the 1, hope there's no attack reaction I don't know about, and then the cards in my hand let me present probably more than lethal on my turn, and to sort of keep that tempo. Yeah. So it's really hard. And again, it's a thing where it's super hard to know all of the cards. If you're not playing against Oldhims that are running pummels all the time, it's hard to guess that that's what's going to get you.
Yeah.
But it's just, and that's what happened. And I think I made the right call.
Yeah.
There's no realistic way. Again, if we were playing against like a warrior or ninja, I could have realistically telegraphed the razor reflex.
Yeah. It would have been at least a little bit more apparent. But,
but pummel from Oldhim out of Arsenal was not even not even on the radar.
That was that was the big thing. And every other Oldhim that plays in our local meta, I don't think a single one of them runs any pummels at all. And I'm pretty sure I may have pitched a blue one early, but I honestly don't even think that I did.
I don't think you did.
So there was no indication that I had attack reactions at all in the deck.
No.
So I think that if I was in your position, I would have done exactly the same thing. Yeah. Because realistically, as we were talking about it in the post game, if you had blocked with even one more card from your hand, it becomes a lot more awkward to try to swing back with enough to actually gain some tempo back. So hoping that I don't have it and being able to rely on a good 3-card hand to put in as much damage as possible, I think is absolutely the correct play. I wouldn't have done anything different, but sometimes you just get got.
I mean, in my mind, Bill bluffed it like he had it, and I was like, this is a great bluff, but it's not going to work, Bill. But he isn't bluffing. He had it, and he just killed me. And so
I think I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure there's somebody in our local meta that said to me one time that if they're playing against me, they assume that I have an attack reaction at all times.
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently, that's just what I'm known for. But anyway, so the Oldhim deck, the game in general was actually relatively close, and you had some really huge turns.
Yes.
Against any other deck, I think that would have been very, very punishing.
I made an uncharacteristically high amount of embodiment of lightning tokens for single attack earth.
Yeah, I think you made, it was 4 in a row.
Yeah,
it was actually crazy. Yeah. But anyway, and then to round it out, the last game in this series was versus Ira, which I think generally is just maybe the hardest matchup for this style of deck.
It went exactly how I expected it to go.
Yeah, with the amount of defense reactions that the deck naturally plays, I play 2
6
Sink Below.
Flick-Flacks.
Yeah, I play 6 Flick-Flacks, 2 of each color, and then the Sink Belows, and then technically Sigil of Solace. I would count that as a defense reaction.
Yeah. Do you also play like Foresight?
I don't actually play that one. I don't play.
Assumed you did.
No, I don't. I don't play Fate for Scene.
Yeah, Fate for Scene.
But yeah, just the sheer amount of block and the amount of inevitability that Ninja has in general is really tough, especially when you're playing. When you're playing a deck like Earthbriar that relies on having a big attack in hand, hopefully something to set it up, hopefully something to fuse, and then something to pay for all of that.
Yeah.
So losing any one of those pieces makes the end attack much less impressive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
you basically need to put a deck like Ira completely on the back foot in 2 turns, because that's roughly what you have in amount of time where you don't care about their attacks. Where it's like, okay, you're going to attack me for 7 on this turn. Okay, I'll take 7 because I need all 4 cards in my hand.
Yep.
Eventually, as the game drags on, you get to the point where you have fewer and fewer cards in your hand to do fewer and fewer impactful things. But there's a point where Ira and like even Katsu, where it's like, well, I can block with 3 cards out of my hand as long as I have a 0-cost blue. I'm attacking you with 2 weapons.
Yeah,
and that's anywhere from 2 if you're playing Katsu to 4 if you're playing Ira, and that's just 2 cards out of your hand. Like it's death by 1,000 cuts no matter what ninja you're playing against. And so you just gotta, I think in that one though, I like attacked you for 18 and
yes. I'm pretty sure that was it was Bramble Spark into the big one.
Yeah, 2 red Bramble Sparks.
Both fused.
And both fused, and a Channel Mount Heroic into Stir the Wildwood for a mighty amount of damage.
Yeah, it was pretty obscene. But I was able to hit enough of my defense reactions and also both of my sigils and both of my life for a life's hit. So I had 8 extra health to start, and then also had my defense reactions. So that was just going to be a tough one anyway.
Seems a lot.
You still got me down to 2, so that was still pretty decent. But yeah. So anyway, in general, unfortunately, Briar won 1 out of 4 games, or 1 out of 5 games.
1 out of 5.
But I think there were a lot of discussions that we had after the games that could sort of help if you wanted to play this style of deck. I personally, even though I was on the other side of the table and I did win 4 of these games, I think that Earthbriar, legitimately, the pieces that are there are extremely strong.
Yeah.
It's maybe slightly hard to leverage them, but I think the leverage for the high end of like explosive growth and
Bramble Spark,
even just Channel Mount Heroic.
Channel Mount Heroic is really
I think
good.
that the leverage is like worth it if you can get it to sort of mesh cohesively. I think that the deck becomes like kind of a monster.
Yeah. So this is sort of where you get into the discussions of there was Lightning Briar and Earth Briar and merging them into a hybrid. The big problem with this, and it's not even a problem, it's the deck itself. This was my attempt at making a deck from scratch. This wasn't one I found online, and ultimately it came down to a lot of playing a lot of Earth non-attack actions because they were more playable than the Earth attack actions, so I could make sure I could fuse stuff. So actually sitting down and looking at the list, it's not quite as close as you want. There's only 9 attacks in it. So the fact that I did as well as I did is shocking.
Especially just to go back to the game where you played 2 Sonatas for 4 and you hit 2 attack, 2 non-attack on both in the same game.
Yes.
Out of 9 total attacks, you saw 4 of them off of your Sonatas.
Yeah.
Like that's just wild.
That and going with like playing a more budget side of the equipment. If you put a lot of money into your equipment side and then you actually make sure you get the ratios correct and realize just for getting late game damage in, a 3-cost 7 Earth attack is better than a 1-cost basically do nothing Earth non-attack. Yeah. I think this deck has a lot of potential to it.
Yes, me too.
And it fell on the unfortunate shoulders of my poor deck building. that it didn't shine as brightly as I'm well aware that it could.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. Like, just because a deck isn't made by a bunch of people online doesn't mean you shouldn't play it. I think that you should absolutely feel totally comfortable putting a deck together and bringing it, because even with your admission of, oh well, this deck wasn't as good as it could be, I really genuinely think you could bring the list that you have right now to a local Armory event and win games.
Probably do well, yeah.
Like actually realistically win games, because the amount of damage when you're attacking in for 18, people just aren't expecting that.
No.
So I think that there shouldn't be any fear in deciding to try to make your own stuff, especially with a game this young. Like,
give it a shot.
Yeah.
And again, it's a learning experience. You learn. Like, I learned a lot by building this deck. About the mechanics of how it works and how to make it better. I don't think I would have learned as much if I had just gotten a list offline.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're newer to the game. Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I thought this was a great experience. I am very impressed seeing a non-lightning Briar deck still doing well, and not because of the fact that you're leveraging the generic attacks like Tyrios Briar is. Like, the fact that this is sort of Briar as she was, I think, supposed to be played, like intended to be played. I really liked this. It felt strong. It felt like flavorful. There are just a couple kinks to work out, but I think the bones here are really strong. Yeah. But anyway, thank you very much for joining me on the journey through the Goliath Gauntlet. For any decks that you would like to see put through other gauntlets, please comment them down below. I do have an Oldhim deck now, and I know that there are a lot of people in the comments that are waiting for Oldhim to be showcased. But yeah, if you want to see any specific heroes put through the gauntlet, please feel free to let us know. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell, and thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Hey, thanks for checking out the Spike Feeders on YouTube. Before you close the window, make sure you click subscribe for more great Flesh and Blood content.